Hello and welcome to the Cardiac Cats YouTube channel. I'm your host, Jacob Chorba, and we are back because we just had to listen to what was probably the worst press conference in the history of press conferences. I don't know if I've ever heard two people who inspired less faith than what Shad Khan and Trent Baalke just did. I mean, if you were wanting to know that this franchise is just completely fucked for the next 20 years or however long that Shad Khan's here, then you're probably pretty thrilled right now if that's what you're looking for, because that's basically what we figured out. Oh my gosh, absolute train wreck. I just want to talk about some of the stuff that they said, because this is delusional. I mean, the kind of things that are genuinely believed by Shad Khan about this organization and where this team is. It's insanity. And at the end of the day, like, I sit here, and as much as I want to win as a fan, I'm almost just sitting here like, I hope they freaking suck, so you look stupid because you deserve to look stupid at this point. But my gosh, I mean, let's talk about some of this stuff. I just try to bookmark a bunch of tweets, just kind of hitting on things in the press conferences, some of it my own stuff. Other stuff, though, from a lot of people who are great to follow. On Twitter, Travis D. Holmes, Mia O'Brien, Ampwig, and Rick Ballou. I probably said his last name wrong. I apologize, Rick. Just some wild stuff. So we're just gonna walk through this, and we're gonna, I don't know what you call it, use a baloneyometer or a bullshit meter, and it's probably going to be a 10 the whole time. But we'll start with this. So, Travis D. Holmes tweeting is, Shad Khan, for all intents and purposes, just advised that clean slate rebuild will be suicidal. Incremental changes seem to forever be his way of doing business with the Jaguars. And yeah, this is basically what was said. You have the tweet here by Mia O'Brien over the quote. He was talking about why they didn't just reset. Like, your team sucks. You completely failed for what it was supposed to be this year. And you made one change so far. One. Because, like, no one else is fired right now. I'm assuming Press Taylor is. Like, he's not going to be here. But Ryan Nielsen's not fired as of now. There's no confirmation on that. He might be back next year, for all you know. So you don't even know if he made changes there. I mean, Trent Baalke might keep him, for all we know. But the reasoning, he goes into talking about freaking, oh, you have 85 people in the scouting department and you can't make changes like that. You want to hire 85 people? It's like, dude, you run an NFL organization. I don't give a crap if that takes time to get new people in the organization. I'm not sitting here and saying that all 85 scouts are bad. Right? I'm not even saying that any of them are bad. Like, I don't know them personally, but to sit here and say that you can't make big changes because it would be too much to do, like, you're not being honest with yourself then. And that's really why we're here with Trent Baalke, because he's gaslit himself into thinking that Trent Baalke's done a good job. Right? It's mind-boggling. We'll get into more of that and Trent Baalke's track record, because he talked on it. And the way he talked about it was like, this guy is the freaking second coming of Jesus. I mean, it's not the case. But, yeah, I completely agree here with Travis, though. I mean, this is scary, because for someone to basically call it suicidal to clean sweep head coach and GM in the same offseason, I mean, what world are you living in? Because you will never be able to have an identity change as a team, or you won't have an identity. Because to keep the GM, for example, now you have to bring in a head coach that fits the GM's philosophy, right? To where they're going to agree on how this team should be built. Or if they disagree, well, the coach isn't going to really get what he wants, because he's not going to really agree on the players that the GM will prioritize. And if we know anything, so Trent Baalke is in charge of everything for this team. So that's your problem. Even if it's head coach that you're keeping, and you're bringing in a new GM, if that GM comes in, it doesn't do what the head coach wants, you got a problem. You have to get a GM that fits that. They don't give a crap about that. They're just getting whoever the heck, and Trent Baalke just picks whoever he wants. It never works out. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say Doug Peterson should have a lot of excuses. His time in Jacksonville didn't go well, ultimately, because of a lot of things that were his fault. He couldn't move on from people who were issues. He couldn't adapt. He couldn't innovate. He couldn't do any of those things. But I also looked at this, and I'm like, you look at what Doug probably wants as far as players. How much of that did he really get? Because Trent Baalke's doing whatever the hell he wants. He doesn't care what Doug Peterson wants on the team. He couldn't give less of a crap. It's pretty clear at this point. I mean, the guy's went through freaking 5 head coaches now. He's going to go through a 6th. Whether or not he survives that one, who knows? I mean, it's almost a matter of like when's the guy going to croak. I mean, that's probably when his career is going to be over, and maybe he'll still be the GM after he's in his grave. Like, we don't really know at this point. We'll move on to the next one. This was something I wanted to talk about. This was from John Shipley's article. I took Mia O'Brien's suite because she had the picture pulled up. This was a quote the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sports Illustrated got from one prominent candidate mentioned multiple times as a potential answer to the Jaguars' future. First of all, that limits it to 2 people. That is Ben Johnson or Liam Cohen. The way this quote is written and the way it talks about Trent Baalke, I think it's very clearly Ben Johnson. Now, I don't know this 100% for sure, right? I'm kind of guessing. But I think it's pretty clear this is Ben Johnson because we have at least heard with Liam Cohen, given his honest lack of knowledge with Trent Baalke and, less time in the NFL recently. He's had 1 year with the Rams as OC, one with the Bucks, and then he was at a lower position with the Rams before all that. It's pretty clear this comes from Ben Johnson. It says, for the Jaguars to change direction, you actually have to change direction. Retaining Trent Baalke greatly diminishes my interest in that job. Lots of promise, but same roadblocks. And obviously, the last part of this is all we've heard today. This is all we've heard for months. This is all we heard in, 2022? When Doug Peterson was the candidate they went with that they didn't talk to for like 4 weeks after his interview and then offered him the job after. No one wants this job. No one wants to work with Trent Baalke. This is a job for people that have no other opportunities coming their way ever again. This would be a job for, maybe a Bill O'Brien this next year. Because who the hell wants Bill O'Brien? Trent Baalke, apparently. Which they haven't requested an interview or anything, but they did last time, I believe. But this is just, it's hard to read, right? Because you look at how Ben Johnson has been in the last few years and how promising he is and what he would have brought to Jacksonville and even bringing back like Mark Brunell as the quarterback's coach. Things like that. It would have been such an incredible fit and an exciting fit for Jacksonville that, who knows, maybe it wouldn't have worked out. We'll see in the future. We'll see how good Ben Johnson is as a head coach when he gets that job. But man, if he works out and you chose Trent Baalke over Ben Johnson, you should be ashamed of yourself. That's pathetic at the end of the day. Just pathetic. But I thought this was worth noting because they tried to make it very clear in this press conference that keeping Trent Baalke has no impact on head coaches being interested. That's bullshit. Very clearly it does. That's all we've heard. The NFL right now is baffled that Trent Baalke has a job. Hey, listen to this whole press conference. Trent Baalke ain't saying crap. He's just trying to stay quiet the whole time. Because he doesn't have answers. He's just a politician at this point. This was another thing. One of the only things Trent Baalke said, going 4-13 this year, right? But what he said basically was that this team just needs to be a little bit better. When he was asked about how do we improve, what are expectations for the future and that stuff, they're just a little bit off. It's the same answer of, we're doing everything right. We're just a little off, right? We're going to keep the same process. We're going to do the same things. We're insane. Because the same things over and over are somehow going to lead to a different result, in their opinion. Just a little bit better. Ampwig, in one breath, it's all been collaborative, not just on Peterson. That was something they said, was that this was a collaborative thing. No single person was taking the blame. But like Ampwig says here, who got fired? Doug Peterson. You want to sit here and act like it was a collaborative issue. Why this team failed. But one person's getting canned and he's not even the person who's been there the longest. I'm not saying Doug should have been kept. But to sit here and just ignore it with Trent Baalke, it says a lot. Right? I mean, this is just ridiculous at this point. Like, it does not matter what Baalke does. We just cannot acknowledge it if it means anything about his future with this team. If this freaking insanity going on with it. The other thing, talking about just keeping things the same and that they just gotta adjust some things, right? That's all we need. That's all Jacksonville needs. We got the winning formula here because we went 9-8 2 years in a row. One of those, the biggest collapse in franchise history, but they have it figured out, guys. They got to figure it out, right? Khan says the new head coach needs to be comfortable with what we're doing. Like, I love the sentiment here because I completely agree. It's like, what you're doing sucks. It objectively sucks what you've been doing. It's not working. It's not successful. You have failed now 2 years in a row because of what you're doing. The only reason why Trent Baalke even looks like somewhat below average rather than just a complete train wreck is for two reasons. One, because he lucked into Brian Thomas Jr. And two, the guy has spent during his time here. The one offseason he didn't spend was because he put the team $30 million over the cap. And he had to just throw in a ton of void years. And that's why the cap looks somewhat okay right now, because you're paying for players for freaking 3 years after they're gone down the road. Because that's how we're going to run this whole thing. I mean, look at the Trevor Lawrence cap hits. Like, I mean, he's getting paid like $15 million or something next year. It's a low amount. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. You got cap hits like 20, 30, freaking $78 million. Because you're pushing this all down the road for when he eventually croaks or retires or whatever. He's not going to be here to deal with it. This one pissed me off. They ask him. They're like, so, Shad Khan, who is going to be leading the head coaching search? They ask, is Trent Baalke going to be leading the head coaching search? And they're asking all this because they're trying to figure out if there's going to be any other voice of reason in the room that's going to be able to sit here and actually listen to these candidates when they tell them, maybe I don't want to work with Trent Baalke because he sucks at his job, or mention a plethora of other issues with this team, right? But Shad Khan doesn't understand what that question is. He responds by saying, I'm not sure what you mean by leading. Like, have you never heard of the word leading before? What does this mean? Like, someone has to lead the interview process. Like, it's not just like 15 guys walk into a room and sit down and just like wing it. Like, there needs to be structure to this, and someone has to set up that structure. Someone needs to be in charge of it. And he just like deflects it. Doesn't even want to answer the question because he knows where these things are heading and he doesn't want to answer those questions. Getting some stuff from Mia O'Brien here. This was one of the dumbest quotes I've ever heard in my life. Asked about if Trevor Lawrence will have a say in the next head coach, it says. Shad Khan says he talks regularly to all players, not just Trevor, regularly. And we, at no point, we'll make this very clear, no point have we ever heard that Trevor Lawrence has been overbearing on what the Jaguars do. No point. And we know what Aaron Rodgers has done in New York, right? We saw that this year. He drove the freaking team into the ground. Whether or not you agree or disagree with all his decisions, like, he took control of that team. When they got him, he was the head honcho, and it did not work. He brought in his buddies, and it failed. And Shad Khan, who's friends with Woody Johnson here, says, let's be clear, this isn't a second coming of Aaron Rodgers 2.0. Now, we'll just ignore that this isn't even like a correct statement because second coming of Aaron Rodgers 2.0, it would just be second coming of Aaron Rodgers. There's no Aaron Rodgers 2.0. But, like, why are you saying this? Like, why would you go out and say this? Because you not only, like, take a shot at your friend, who's also a moron when it comes to football decisions, but you're comparing this in any light to Trevor Lawrence? Like, to even give that statement, like, any sort of relation with Trevor Lawrence is a huge, what's the right word for this? It's a blemish on him, right? Like, you don't want to correlate those two things at all because then people are going to think about that. So I don't know why the hell that was said. That was a ridiculous quote. Probably the dumbest, potentially, of what he said. You also had just, this is an interesting one, but one thing I did want to at least note, qualities in the next head coach. He starts, first of all, by just saying, we want them to win. It's like, no duh. Like, hopefully you do. We all question that at times if you want to win or if you care to win, but that was the start of it. And the only thing he mentioned was just being unpredictable. Right? That this team has been very predictable on both sides of the ball. And he is right. But I look at this and I agree with what he wants to go after generally. Like, I think you need an innovative head coach. I think you need someone who is going to make this team hard to play against. But you also just wiped out all those candidates because they don't want to work with your guy. It's like, okay, who would be the two names that come to mind? Technically three, if you want to throw in Joe Brady. But it'd be Ben Johnson and Liam Cohen. Liam Cohen maybe comes here and ruins his career with Trent Baalke. Like, that's possible from what we've heard. I'm sure he'll interview for the job. But you're probably not getting any of these people. So it's just funny to me, like, to see him say that and know that none of these people are going to consider his job. Got a couple more here. Shad Khan notes the body of work of GM Trent Baalke is what gives him confidence. You look at the building blocks, the players we're building the team around. You look at our salary cap, right? It's not the long-term cap, it's the salary cap this year. Because the way Trent Baalke has set this up is to look pretty in the short term. And eventually, if Baalke was to stay, let's just say he stayed here for the next 10 years, he's going to run into issues eventually. Because, like, this next year, you still have a good cap situation, but this is the first year you have void cap hits. You have them on Brandon Scherf. Each year going forward, you're going to have more and more and more of those. And the contracts signed last offseason were far worse than what we've signed beforehand. As I mentioned earlier, Trevor Lawrence, at one point, will carry a $78 million cap hit and $74 million the next year. Now, are those unguaranteed years? Yeah, but a huge portion of that is money that was prorated down the road. So it's still got to sit there. You can't move that money. So, I mean, we're talking about, like, each of those years, like, just one player, $25 million in dead cap hits, something like that. We could look at the numbers eventually when we do, like, our salary cap dive, which we'll try to do this offseason. But this is bullcrap. Like, salary cap, it's not terrible, but it is surely not this great situation that people want to make. The number of draft picks we have. Our draft picks, like, it's good, but it's not like we have an extra first round, right? Or an extra second round. This is a third and a fourth for Minnesota, and I guess a future fourth next year for Minnesota. So it's something, but this is also the Vikings, and those are going to be late picks unless they, like, collapse next year. Even if they go on the wild card round, the third round pick is going to be at highest, like, number 88. So it's not something incredible. It's something, but draft picks are not a huge thing. Key players getting paid, that's good in some regards, but you don't want to pay the wrong guys. You also don't want to rush it just for the sake of saying you're paying your own. It's part of the issue I had with paying Trevor Lawrence so early. Like, as much as I want to believe in Trevor Lawrence, as much as I think he could turn things around and play at that consistently high level you want, which he is not yet, you have to see that happen. Like, you can't go pay someone top of the league, above every other player or tied with the top player, when you don't know that this is the case. And this year you got an up and down season from him. There's a lot of questions. So this is not just an automatic good thing, but we just pretend it is. And we have not mortgaged our future. Which, I mean, look, it's not the worst cap situation in the world, but the trend that they are making and the direction they've gone with their cap and how they're spending, this will be a bad situation eventually. Right? And we started from a great situation. Like, things have objectively got worse with the cap every year here. The only year you could argue is, 2023 offseason, because they basically did their spending for that offseason in 2022. That's really the only one. Got a couple more. Jaguars owner Shad Khan says it's got to be the right person if they were to add an EVP. We need to add some people. We're lean. But if you look at the football side, we've added people. We've changed some people. If we find the right person, definitely. It just sounds like nothing's going to happen with it. I think with EVP, I think we all would love to see it because we want someone over Trent Baalke. We want someone to fire Trent Baalke maybe for Shad Khan, or get Shad Khan out of the football side of things. I think that's a lot of the reasoning. I don't think this happens just because I don't know who the EVP would be. And I know there's been talk about Tony Baselli, but I don't know if Baselli would want to work here if Trent Baalke is like a definitive part of the franchise going forward that you can never move on from. Like, they just aren't on the same page. Final thing, just to note this, they didn't even let one of the guys ask a question. Rick here, been with the team since day one, won't even let him ask a question. Just stupid things like this from this team. I mean, this was an awful press conference. I think all it told us was that Shad Khan has almost no football knowledge. Trent Baalke 100% feeds him all of his football knowledge. And because of that, he's not going to move on from it. It's almost like if you had a kid that, or say like they're a teenager, and they're really into something. They have like this hobby they're big into. You don't know anything about it, right? But this teenager of yours is like, he's supposed to be really good at it. He's really into it. And he tells you everything you know about it. And he sounds really smart. But in reality, the guy is like bottom 5% of people who are into it, right? And you think that they're smart because that's all you hear. And it sounds complicated. But in reality, they're not really a trusted source. That's how I view Trent Baalke. Where Shad Khan sees him as like that teenager. That he believes the things he says because they sound smart, but there's no one else there to tell him, hey, this is bullshit. No one's there to tell him. That's kind of how I view it. But, man, I don't know what to say. This is such a disappointing day. This should not be happening. We should not be in this situation. And the worst part of it is I don't even think this is just a matter of, like, let's go through 2025, let's suck again, and then Trent Baalke will be gone. Like, I have no confidence in them to hire anyone good. I don't think that they would ever clean house. Like, I think the only scenario that I could envision in my mind, this is, like, very unlikely that things will play out like this. They have to luck into this, right? It'd be like, okay, maybe they hire Liam Cohen, and somehow he wants to work here. But somehow, like, it's clear that the team just sucks this year because of the players on it. Trent Baalke gets fired, and then Liam gets his guy. And then Liam ends up being good. Like, that's the only scenario I can think of in my mind where this works. And it's so, like, out there and unlikely to happen because of how specific it has to be. And who knows if he would even keep his job. I would imagine he would, just because Shad's scared to fire a GM and a head coach, because no NFL team does that, right? Never seen that before. it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where this team really can get things right. I think at the end of the day, we're kind of held hostage until Shad Khan is basically forced to see how much of an idiot he's being at this point. And look, I don't expect a ton from him as far as football knowledge. But you have to, I think as a businessman, if you're not smart at something or you're not good at something and you're this rich, pay someone who's good at it. Get good people to listen to. Like, you're getting swindled and sold snake oil and giving money to the freaking Nigerian prince that isn't giving you anything back. And you're falling for it over and over and over. And you are the only person that genuinely thinks that this is the right guy. No one else believes that. Except Trent Baalke, who knows his bullshit deep down. But Shad Khan keeps falling for it. As long as he is, this franchise is held hostage. And the scary part of it now, when they fail Trevor Lawrence again, with this next head coach and this GM pairing, that's not going to work out unless it's a freaking divine intervention miracle from God. What's going to happen to Trevor Lawrence? Is he going to stick around here? Does he really want to be a part of this if things go that bad? Is he going to be a good enough player that you pay the whole contract to? Is he going to be what you think he can be? I think if I had to make the bet, I hate to say it, the answer to me is no. At this point, I'm not even blaming this on Trevor Lawrence. I'm not saying it's because Trevor Lawrence sucks or anything like that. But I do not think this team is going to be capable of doing what they need to do to support Trevor Lawrence and make him be a franchise quarterback that's actually good enough to be worth what he's getting paid. And I think we're going to be stuck in hell because of it. So unfortunately, we'll end it there. But I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on this terrible press conference. But I want to thank our channel members once again. Premier Seer 904, Mr. Dolphin, Scrubber Ducky 500, and Brian Foster, all for supporting the channel. Look, guys, I love talking about this stuff. We'll still have stuff this offseason. It is tempting with how just completely atrocious the Jaguars situation is to just not even want to record and to just stop this until they figure things out down the road. But I don't think we're going to do that. I love football, and I think at this point we've all learned how to deal with this, unfortunately. So, yeah. But we'll see you in the next one. I'm excited to have some good stuff out this week. I think we're going to do Fixing the Jaguars. We'll have, this might not all be out this week, but Fixing the Jaguars is one thing I want to do. So we'll go through like a whole mock off season. We will look at the mock rebuild probably one more time here before going into the off season. So just wrap up that stuff from this year. And I do want to do a first round mock draft if possible, at least the top 18 picks. Take a look at who everyone might take, if there's any trades, and get your first look at the first round of the NFL draft. We'll do that for all teams. So that's our plans, but I appreciate y'all being here, supporting us. Let me know your thoughts. Vent all you want. I'm all open to it. To the people who have just been saying nonstop, Trent Baalke's not going to get fired. We all know it. Congratulations. You were right. Never going to doubt you again. But apparently you could just say that and you're going to be correct no matter what. And that's fair to say at this point. But I appreciate it, guys. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. And finally, go Jags.